Let's just dive right into this. Welcome to our explainer on training a happy mind, the ascension to optimal experience. Look, if you've ever felt like your own brain is, well, kind of working against you, or if you're just looking for a solid way to structure your mental habits for a happier, more successful mindset, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going on a really cool, highly structured journey. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of human happiness using cognitive psychology, ancient meditative practices, and the hard science of peak performance.
Here's the roadmap for today. We've got the daily thought count, fixed versus growth mindset, 5 brain training exercises, the path of meditation, and finally, achieving the flow state.
All right, starting off with Section 1, the daily thought count.
Before we even look at the data, I want you to take a second and just guess. How busy is your brain on a completely average day? Like how many individual thoughts do you think actually cross your mind from the second you wake up to the moment you finally fall asleep? Well, according to estimates highlighted by psychotherapist Amy Morin over in Psychology Today, that number is a staggering 70,000. Just let that sink in for a second. 70,000 distinct thoughts just pinging around in your mind every single day. I mean, that is an incredibly high volume of mental traffic to manage, right?
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates why that specific number matters so much. Because those aren't just passive little observations floating by. There are 70,000 chances to either build yourself up or tear yourself down every single day. Each thought is an active opportunity. Think about it. If your inner dialogue is constantly calling yourself names or doubting your abilities or second-guessing your decisions, you are actively harming your performance and your well-being tens of thousands of times a day. But hey, the fantastic news here? You can absolutely change how you think.
Which brings us to Section 2, fixed versus growth mindset.
So, to actually shape those 70,000 thoughts, we really need the right psychological foundation. We need to look at the underlying operating system of our brains. Take a look at this quote highlighted in The Marginalian by Debbie Millman. Work as hard as you can, imagine immensities. She actually goes on to say that if you imagine less, less will be what you undoubtedly deserve. And you know, this isn't just some fluffy motivational platitude. Believing in immense potential is an absolute prerequisite for a happy and successful mind.
This leads us directly into the really groundbreaking work of Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck. The difference between these two mindsets is pretty stark. In a fixed mindset, you basically believe your abilities and intelligence are completely static. You know, you are who you are and you just can't change. But in a growth mindset, you believe you have an unlimited potential for growth through effort. So the crucial takeaway here is this. The way you view your own potential literally dictates your behavior. If you want to train a happy mind, you've got to fiercely adopt a growth mindset.
Moving right along to Section 3, 5 brain training exercises. Okay, so now that we've got our growth mindset installed and ready to go, we're going to look at the practical, active training steps you can take to shape your daily thoughts and essentially work out your mental muscles. Here are 5 core exercises outlined by Amy Morin. Number 1, differentiate between rumination and problem solving. 2, talk to yourself like you're a trusted friend. 3, actively label your emotions. So don't just say, I have a lump in my throat. Actually say, I am sad. 4, consciously balance your emotions with logic, like making a simple pros and cons list. And 5, practice gratitude. Let's actually dig a little deeper into a couple of these.
It is absolutely critical to separate spinning your wheels from making actual progress. Rumination means rehashing the past and catastrophizing about things you literally cannot control. It's totally unproductive and just drains your energy. Problem solving, on the other hand, means preventing future problems and actively seeking strategies. It's productive and it builds confidence. So the next time you find yourself dwelling on an issue, just pause and ask yourself which side you're currently on. If you're ruminating, you have to actively change the channel in your brain.
And let's explore that 5th exercise for a second. Practicing gratitude. Research shows grateful people are 25% happier. I mean, that is a massive return on investment for simply taking a moment at breakfast, or maybe scribbling in a journal before bed to just train your brain to look for the good. It is hands down the simplest, most direct route to boosting your overall well-being.
All right, Section 4, the path of meditation.
So we're shifting gears slightly from Western cognitive psychology to a really powerful complementary approach from mental regulation by Scott Snibbe, which is rooted in Tibetan Buddhism. And I absolutely love this insight. Realize that you are not your worst habits, your worst thoughts. Snibbe reminds us that if an unpleasant thought or even a horrible urge pops into your mind, you can literally just let it pass by. Why? Because your underlying nature is fundamentally kind, compassionate, and wise.
You are the sky, the thoughts are just passing clouds. This meditation practice involves a few core reflections. First, reflecting on the preciousness of life. Look, if you have health and shelter, you're more fortunate than most. Second, acknowledging impermanence. Everything changes, which means your current problems will shift and unlimited possibilities actually exist. Third, understanding the influences that shape others. That builds deep empathy, even for those who really anger you. And finally, taking refuge in your inner goodness. Do you notice how perfectly this mirrors the cognitive exercises we were just talking about? It actively steers the mind away from that fixed, hopeless kind of thinking. And this naturally leads to a really profound meditative question. Where is this solid self that gives me so much grief? You know, the self that wants so many things, that gets annoyed all the time, that projects its own delusions onto other people. When you actually sit down and look for it in your thoughts and feelings, you'll notice how incredibly elusive it really is. Letting go of this rigid ego is a massive, massive step toward a lighter, happier mind.
Now, for our final piece, Section 5, Achieving the Flow State.
Okay, so we've built the foundation, we've trained the thoughts, and we've calmed the ego. Now, let's talk about the absolute peak of human mental experience, flow. It's a concept pioneered by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and it's defined as the mental state where a person is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment. It's that magical feeling of being completely in the zone. And listen, this isn't just some corporate buzzword. It's a heavily researched psychological phenomenon where action and consciousness literally melt together.
But why does it feel so all-consuming? Well, it comes down to the number 110. That is the exact number of bits of information per second our conscious mind can process. To put that into perspective, decoding someone speaking to you takes about 40 to 60 bits alone. So when you are in a flow state, the task at hand is consuming all 110 bits. There's literally zero attention left over to monitor time, to worry about your problems, or even to notice that you're hungry. Your entire cognitive capacity is fully engaged.
But here's the thing. Flow doesn't just happen by accident. According to the research, there are 3 non-negotiable conditions required to actually enter it. First, the activity has to have clear goals and clear progress. Second, it requires clear and immediate feedback so you can adjust your performance on the fly. And third, and honestly, this is the most critical one, there has to be a very precise balance between the perceived challenges of the task and your perceived skills.
This really brilliantly illustrates what happens when that balance is off. Think about it. If a task is low challenge but you have high skill, you just end up in apathy and boredom, right? You completely lose interest. On the flip side, if the challenge is way higher than your skill level, you feel anxious. The true flow state exists exclusively in that sweet spot where high challenge meets high skill. Your mind is genuinely at its happiest and most engaged when it's being actively stretched, pushing its limits to overcome a really meaningful challenge.
Which brings us right back full circle. We've journeyed from understanding our daily mental traffic to adopting a growth mindset, practicing those daily cognitive exercises, grounding ourselves through meditation, and finally reaching for that peak experience of flow. So I want to leave you with this final, vital question. Armed with these tools and this new understanding, how are you going to use your next 70,000 thoughts?